to take influences from them, but also find your own voice is the most important thing. Start with a sine wave and the story, and work out from there if you can, if you're clever enough. One of the most important things in music, and for me, it is the most important thing, is melody. You're always influenced by your surroundings and films that you watch and people you admire, and to try and separate, to take influences from them, but also find your own voice is the most important thing. It's kind of the most important thing in film scoring. Otherwise, you start to eat yourself musically, and that's very boring for everybody. If you're a player, it makes it easier. I'm a singer, and I play a lot of instruments badly. So not here really when I'm working in Los Angeles. When I'm working at home in the UK, I have a lot of instruments around me, which helps me. I tend to play things. It's a difficult one because you. I tell you something I do is in my sequencer, I tend to play everything in. I tend not to do things with my role, my editor role, and so I'm trying to feel the music. I'm trying to feel it as I play it. So people who work with me might find it very boring because I'll be going over the same thing. I'm looking for a performance. So performance is one thing. But going back to composers, I started off in the camp of the Zimmer camp. You know, he was my mentor, and I was his assistant 20 years ago. And I found it quite hard because a big character like him impressed me a lot with his musical values. And so I found it hard to separate myself, and it probably took me a few years after being his assistant to find my own voice. How I found that was to play and to not listen and to admire. And thirdly, the film. When you work with somebody who's a filmmaker, it's very important to listen to what they have to say story-wise rather than trying to force your own musical ideas onto the film. And then you can find a different voice for each film that actually follows the story. It's really important because each film requires something new, unless you're stuck in one particular genre. I did comedy for a long time, so I was writing comedy music, and now I'm doing a lot of superhero music. And so the next film I might do might require something big band, and then the next time it might just require a piano and a violin. But it's terribly important. And one thing I will say for young composers, a lot of them, the whole thing of library music and library production music, a lot of people do it to earn a few quid before they get their job in their first documentary, their first TV show, their first movie. I will say that doing a lot of that will really help because you get to practice. I did quite a lot of that before I got my first job, and it was great getting write a jazz track, write a country track. All these things at the time felt slightly banal musically for me, but now I really appreciate that I did that. I feel like I'm a jack of quite a few trades. So. Yes, styles are very important. Your own voice is very important, but being able to swing some jazz, important. Not very often, but if you want to have a broad palette of movies to work on, then you really do need to understand classic music through to synthesizers and all the rest of it. I say synthesizers like I'm an old fart. I meant synths, but there you go. One of the really enjoyable things about doing a movie score, if you've got time, obviously if you've got 4 weeks, you haven't got a lot of time to tweak your sounds, is getting your palette going. I mean, let's not forget that one of the most important things in music, and for me, it is the most important thing, is melody. I couldn't do a whole score without melody. I'm not clever enough. I need a melody to hang on to. But one of the joys of writing, if you have some time, once you have your thematic ideas, is to go through and make a palette. And so I've just done a TV show called The Alienist, and for the killer, I worked on a motif that was just on a solo instrument making a foul noise. But it took 2 or 3 days to find that sound, and that was great. Apart from anything else, it was great fun. But sound design, okay, it's a lot of electronic synths and what have you. You really need to turn your hand and take your time. It's not very inspiring to just get straight into use a number one or a preset number one and just stick it in the opening titles, is it really? So you want to have a sound. But once again, I will say that you can quite easily be influenced by the sounds that you find in synths. With an orchestra, you have to use your imagination. The colours, your imagination, and what you've been inspired by, so you have to create them. Whereas with synths, you can just turn on a synth and go for preset 43 and press C, and it'll tell a story. And that's really quite bad, because you have to tell the story yourself. So start with a sine wave and the story, and work out from there if you can, if you're clever enough. But it's practice. It's just practice. It's time. Lots of late nights. Things have changed, and people generally aren't after a big arcing melody for their movies. It can make their film feel less modern. But where in some of the movies I've been doing have actually really required that. They've required a big melody and something romantic or something really heartfelt. And it's very difficult to do that without a melody. If I've got 4 weeks to do a movie score in, which actually is quite rare, it's nice to have a bit of time. But if there are time constraints, then you don't sleep. Get yourself a melody. But I'm doing a movie right now, and the director really wants a melody he can hum and hear, and people will hear it, and our hero, our main character in the film, will be recognized with this melody. He might have asked for a hook or something, but he specifically asked for a melody, which might be regarded as old school, but that's the way we're going to do it on this one. I hope so. I mean, there's no rule, is there? I mean, no one's telling me no one's told me not to use a melody in a film score that I've done. Sometimes you can write a melody and it's too on the nose. It's telling the audience this is a romance, this is a deep love, or this is a sensitive moment. And so it can be too on the nose, and we'll put it away and do something more subtle. That's fair enough, but that's always been the case, You can bash the audience over the head with and tell them this is a moment of romance. But no, I think that it'll always be there. I don't think it's gone. Has it gone? I mean, I heard Shape of Water, which is Oscar nominated. It's a melody. It's a very simple melody, and that's part of its charm. It's a melody. It's not just a riff, I think there's a place for it and place not for it, I mean, then that's where we have to all be adaptable when we're scoring. We're going back to doing a jazz or doing an epic orchestral score. You have to be able to handle it'd be best if you could handle a melody, or you could handle a riff or a motif.